welcome tonight to the Southeastern Citizens Forum meeting, brought to you by USIBWC. We have, this is a hybrid meeting, so we have some people in person here, and we have quite a turnout online as well. So we will be introducing people, or have people introduce themselves likewise. To start things off, though, I would ask my co-chair, Mr. Ben Lumley, to lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could do so. Thank you.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Ben. Ben Lumley is co-chair. I'm the chair, and Mr. Ben Lumley is a co-chair. So we usually alternate presenting at the meetings. But at this time, we will start with introductions of the board members. We'll start with the people that are actually on site here, and then any board members that may be online can introduce themselves. So we'll start all the way in my right-hand side.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Vanderhoek. I'm a resident here at Tubac. Good afternoon, I'm Bruce Bracker.
Good afternoon. I'm Ben Lumley, and I'm a Santa Cruz County native.
I'm John Combo. I live here in Tubac.
Good afternoon, I'm Tim Grother. I live here in Tubac.
If anybody online wants to start introducing themselves, go ahead.
It's Alejandro Bárcenas with City of Nogales.
Crystal Cadillo, IBWC under the Construction Management Division.
Andrea Glover, USIBWC under the Construction Management Division.
Is that all for online?
Buenas tardes, Francisco Luján de la sección mexicana de la Comisión Internacional de Límites y Aguas aquí en Nogales, Sonora. Buenas tardes.
I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Since we have a fairly small group here tonight in person, if anybody in the audience would like to introduce themselves to the board.
Good afternoon, Andres. I'm here with NAPEC.
Albert Flores, the section of the WC.
Claudia Gil, ABQ. Hello, I'm listening to Kelly's office.
And is Frankie, is Commissioner Hennar online?
She is not.
So we'll move over. We have several presentations tonight. The first presentation that we'll be giving is Mrs. Crystal Cadillo. She's a civil engineer with our Construction Management Division, and she's going to be doing a presentation on the International Outfall Interceptor. The next person is going to be myself, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on the Nogales Field Office and specifically the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant updates. And our third presenter is going to be Mr. Rangel. He's Associate Director with North American Development Bank, and he's doing a presentation on updates and status of the Estadio Pump Station. After that, we will have public comment and co-chair comments and future agenda items. So with that, I would like to kick it off with Ms. Crystal Cadillo with her presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I will be presenting on the completion of the International Outfall Interceptor, IOI, as we all know. Next slide, Frankie. So as you all remember, you've heard me say this many times before. You've heard this presentation. And so we know that the IOI is a 9-mile long sewer line. It carries transboundary flows from Nogales, Sonora, and Nogales and Rio Rico in Arizona. The line itself is considered 2 segments. a certain portion, 1.5 miles near the border from manhole 1 to 27 is considered the international trunk line. And then the remainder 7.3 miles to the plant is considered the IOI. It was built in 1971 and it was currently near the end of its service life. A study that was conducted in 2005 identified significant pipeline issues and deterioration. And an additional challenge is that much of the pipeline lies underneath the Nogales Wash Channel or the Potrero Creek. So a contract was issued to rehab and extend the service life of the pipeline, and it was extremely critical in order to reduce the risk of sewage spills from possible collapse portions of that pipe. We had incidents where that did occur, and so we're trying to extend the life of the pipe. So it's also very important to preserve this pipeline because it roughly gives about 12 million gallons per day of treated water that contributes to the Santa Cruz River Basin. That water is used for drinking, ranching, farming, and other activities that are critical to Arizona. And it also sustains habitat that's critical to migratory species. So the design contract was issued to URS. Its duration was from May 2014 to June 2018. It did require quite a bit of coordination. It cost about $781,000. And we also issued post-design support, which was in order to keep the designer on board during the construction. And that cost about $234,000. The methods that were selected for the sewer pipeline, that's between 24 to 42 inches in diameter, was a technology called cast in place piping. And for the 95 manholes, 2 methods were selected, one being the manhole epoxy protective lining, which was the primary method, and carbon fiber coatings, which were used more for structural rehabilitation as well. Next slide. So this diagram shows you the phasing of the project. So due to funding at that time, we could not award a contract for the entire portion of the project. So the project was divided into 5 phases, roughly around 8 to 9,000 linear feet, with the exception of phase 2, which was closer to the border. That was about 11,000 linear feet. And so in general, here you'll see the different phase. They were prioritized by the condition of the pipe. Phase 1 was considered the worst condition, and so that was from manhole 85 to the plant. Then phase 2 started back at the border, and it just kept progressing to 3, 4, and 5, moving up from the border on as far as the condition. Next slide. So the project was issued in 2 contracts. The first contract was about 5.3 miles of piping and 56 manholes, and it also included some wash repairs at manholes 86 and 93 in order to protect the IOI. The contractor for this one was SAK Construction. The construction management contractor was CDM Smith. The project started back in April 2022. And a little bit over a year later, on August 2023, the project was completed. The total cost of this project, including the construction management, was $16.7 million. And then just to give you the progression of the project, they started with the wash repairs, and then they finished phase 1 first in August, phase 3 in December, and by May of the following year in 2023, they had finished phase 2. In 2022, we awarded the second contract, which was the remainder of the project, or the remainder of the phases. It covered 3.4 miles of piping and 38 manholes. It was also awarded to SAK Construction. The construction manager on this one was Arcadis. The construction award again was September 2022. Construction started in August 2023, and almost a year later, substantial completion was completed on June 2024. That cost was $17.6 million. And they started their progression of work was they started with phase 2, which was finished last year, and phase 4 was finished in April. And there you can see a picture of me peeking my head into a manhole to take a really cool picture of some coating being applied. So, very interesting rehab. Next slide, Frankie. So this is what you haven't seen before. So I'm sure you're curious, what did the pipe look like? Surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as we anticipated as far as potential repair. So we never had to do a actual pipe replacement in order to make the or to preserve the pipe or to bring it up to a new condition. We never had to do that. And so in some of these instances, you'll see the different issues that we've encountered in the pipe. So for example, the first picture, it's the before and after rehab. This was between manhole 96 to 97, so very close to the plant. And you see those rings on the pipe, that's the rebar starting to be exposed. And so it was eroded enough that at that point you were starting to see that consistent degradation. And so you can see the picture afterwards, the pipe looks nice and clear and smooth for the most part. The second item shows between manhole 13 and 14 what's some debris at a joint or incrustation. And so in the after picture, you see how it's no longer there, and again the pipe looks good. The third set between manhole 54 to 55, which is the bottom left set of pictures, that one you can see the erosion along the lower half of the pipe, and if you look at the invert, you can see some degradation as well as exposed rebar. And then looking at the post CIPP picture, you can see how that's been covered, and for the most part, the pipe looks good and smooth. And then the last set here between manhole 68 to 69, it's not, I hope you can see it. It's a little difficult, but there was some infiltration that you can observe there, a hole. And then afterwards, when the CIPP was completed, you can see again, that's been taken care of. So just to show you some of the conditions between the old and the new pipeline. Next picture, next slide, Frankie. Now, ownership of the IOI, I'm sure you all are very interested in that. On the ownership transfer, we have a couple things that happened between last year and this year. So the first item that occurred was the Nogales Wastewater Improvement Act of 2023 was finalized. That provided us the authority to then take ownership of that pipeline. And also, after negotiations, the city of Nogales, along with IBWC, we signed an intergovernmental agreement to transfer the IOI on the 11th of April this year. So both the agreement and the act, the ownership takes effect once USIBWC receives the funding for the O&M, and that's planned to occur in fiscal year 2025. Currently, we were informed that the Senate Appropriations Committee is working on adding $2.5 million to our budget for 1 year of O&M. Next slide. So some of the highlights of the agreement, just to kind of show you between us and the city what's required. So for us, obviously the IOI, it becomes federal property. All of the IOI city easements, those get transferred to USIBWC. We take care of 100% of the operation and maintenance of the pipe and the manholes, which would include conducting annual inspections, regularly scheduling cleaning, repairing the IOI as needed. And then we also are going to review and approve permit requests for anything that gets added into the IOI after this point. And we would inspect and approve any new lateral connections. For the city, some of the requirements in the agreement were that they are guaranteed their sewage capacity of 4.84 million gallons per day. They'll also be providing us details of all the contributing laterals to the IOI. They will continue to maintain laterals connected to the IOI, including the one from Rio Rico. They will continue to notify USIBWC of sewer overflows in the IOI. They will provide assistance to us when we have to make IOI repairs. And in the event of new connections, contributing to the IOI, they will be submitting permit applications to IBWC. Next slide. Some of our needs at this point, so that's been decided with our Nogales field office that we will be outsourcing the operation and maintenance for contracted services to maintain that IOI. And we also have some additional capital projects that are required. These would include purchasing equipment in order for IBWC to perform those inspection activities. We would like to install additional flow meters and telemetry to monitor the lateral flows. We would like to install locking manholes and sewage overflow detectors for protection of the IOI. And we want to construct a new operator building and equipment shed for that additional, for all that additional capital and equipment that's required for the maintenance and operation. Next slide. And some additional ownership requirements. The act also, legislation included construction and operation and maintenance of a debris screen. As some of you may be familiar, we have damage in the pipe due to a lot of debris, a lot of different kinds of debris, as well as illegal activity. And so this is definitely something we want to add to the IOI for protection. Some of our preliminary plans are that multiple screens will be required for redundancy and as well as to capture all of the items that are anticipated to be coming in. And our proposed location is as closest to the border in order to maintain as the protection for as much of the trunk line in IOI as possible. This project will require significant coordination. And right here, you can see a very simplified version of a debris screen, but that would be the intent, is to capture any debris that gets into the trunk line. Next slide. And that will conclude my presentation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we got one question, Crystal.
Okay.
This is Bruce Bracker. Do we have proposed locations for these drug screens?
We do not, other than closest to the border around, is it Robbins, I think? But it's just that, yeah, but that's a very complicated spot. There's a lot going on there, including the tunnel, the railroad. So it's going to be a challenge to find the right spot for those debris screens, because it's going to be multiple and we're going to need room for additional items, such as picking up the, like having dumpsters and stuff to pick up the items and access in and out. So but that's what we have proposed at the moment.
Thank you. No collapsing. You don't get anything.
This is Bill. Regarding the notification of overflows, would that also include any, hopefully not ruptures and leaks or anything else, or just overflow? So I think I can take that, Crystal. So there's technologies out there that will, these technologies are used throughout the United States and other countries that will give you pre-warning of potential overflows. So if there's something blocking the line, that will eventually completely instruct it to cause an overflow, or give you a pre-notice, so you can get crews on the way out there to find out what the issue is. So we're hoping with these technologies that it should minimize the amount of overflows, if at all possible. There's different reasons for overflows, pluggages, excess flows, things of that nature. But if we could minimize the number of frequency, that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may.
You need to, right?
Turn your, go ahead. Oh, you need the speaker over here to take care of his speaker.
Go ahead. There was a question online.
Yes, it's Alejandro Bárcenas. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One is, I understand that you're going to outsource the management of the IOI. Where are you in the planning of that, or when is that going to be done, or what's the process for that? And the second question is, you mentioned that, that you're gonna have flow meters in all the laterals. And my question is, I understand that right now, the payment that we make for the operation and maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant is based on the difference between the border and what it gets into the treatment plant. Once we measure all the laterals, are we going to change that?
So I can take that quickly as well. So we are in the process of putting together the contract documents for the contract operation of the International Outfall Interceptor. It's a federal procurement process, so it's very involved, but we're well on our way to that. Again, transfer is going to happen when the FY25 budget takes place, which is October 1st, but traditionally it's not passed by Congress until later to FY25 or midway through FY25. So we have those dates in mind. We plan to have the contracts solicited before that and awarded prior to that. On your second question, Alejandro, I cannot give you an answer on that, on what the future negotiations may hold. And I don't want to hazard a comment on that at this point. That may commit us to something that future executive staff and the agency would be charged with. So.
Great, thank you.
This is on. I just had a question about the O&M costs. Did 2.5 million, does that include all the capital items that you were talking about earlier, the telemetry and flow measurement, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. That's going to be a contracted O&M.
Right. So the O&M is going to be contracted O&M. Some of that money is for some of those items, not the entirety of those items, but for some of those items. So, of course, even though the operations and maintenance of the pipeline is going to be contracted, USIBWC still has other responsibilities and other things that we plan on doing with the pipeline. So it depends how much the contract, how cheaply we get the contract for. We don't anticipate the contract being $2.5 million. But there are starting fees for the first year, et cetera. So mobilization fees and things of that nature. So the first year is usually most expensive and it goes down from there. So.
Are there any other questions online? No questions online.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Crystal. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
So second speaker is myself. So again, my name is John Light. I'm the Area Operations Manager for USIBWC, Nogales Field Office. And I'm going to give a presentation that is going to be started at the 30,000 foot level with USIBWC and then narrow it down to our local field office and some of the things that we're planning to do with the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant. So I'm going to step to one side here so I can get my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, so I can read the presentation. The International Boundary Water Commission is responsible for applying the boundary water treaties between the United States and Mexico. USIBWC has a broad range of responsibilities, including flood control. We have more than 500 miles of levees and 20,000 acres of floodplain. Water delivery, we ensure compliance with the 1906 Convention and 1944 Water Treaty for the Rio Grande and Colorado River. We have dams and hydroelectric power plants. We manage 2 international dams with hydroelectric plants and 4 diversion dams. Sanitation, we have water sanitation with 2 international wastewater treatment plants in San Diego and Nogales, Arizona. And we have boundary demarcation. We made 2 international bridges and almost 800 monuments, markers, and buoys that demarcate the U.S. Mexico border. Next slide, please. So here's the location of some of our field office. We're a unique agency in that our headquarters is actually not in Washington, D.C., but it's in El Paso, Texas. So we have South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant, Colorado River Conservation Projects, Nogales Treatment Plant, Upper Rio Grande, Solomon Park Levy Construction, Lower Rio Grande, Edinburgh Levy Construction, and Rural Colorado Sediment Removal, Amistad Dam, seepage correction. Heavy equipment replacement is another project. We have obviously Mercedes Texas Field Office. We do this all with less than 300 employees total, all the way from Brownsville, Texas, to San Diego, California. And as noted down here, 1/3 of our employees are near retirement age. So they're all in my ballpark, about 1/3 of us. So here's an overview of the Nogales treatment plant. You can see the upper blue line is the Santa Cruz River, and the blue line that goes to the right, that's down on the right-hand side, lower right, that's Nogales Wash Patrol Creek. And you can see the convergence is just east of the treatment plant, goes to Santa Cruz and goes down. So for much of the year, the effluent from the Nogales treatment plant is actually the headwaters of the Santa Cruz in this area. There's usually no flow prior, except during the wet season. Next slide, please. So what's the purpose of the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant? And it's to apply provisions of the 1944 Water Treaty between the United States and Mexico, which gives sanitation priority. And it's to apply minutes 206, 227, 261, 276, and 294. Minutes or sub-agreements to the actual treaty. They're interpretations of treaty language between the two countries that were signed and clarifies things that are in the 1944 treaty. And it's to protect the health and safety of Ambos Nogales residents through safe and effective international wastewater treatment plant. That's the purpose. That's why it's here. Slide, please. And here's our parameters. 80% of our inflow flows originate in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico. The remainder is United States contribution. Water is treated to United States Clean Water Act standards into federal and state discharge requirements. Influent from Mexico is conveyed to the NIWTP through a 9-mile International Outfall Interceptor, which is what Crystal just gave her presentation about. And our treatment capacity is 14.74 million gallons per day. The treatment plant is routine and well above capacity, ranging from 100 to 120%, resulting in no system redundancy ability. So what that means is that everything that we have is running full blast all the time in order to keep up. We don't have any reserve capacity. We don't have reserve components. And the treatment plant was upgraded in 2009. And it was upgraded at that time to what they call a biological nutrient removal facility. So what we do is we remove nutrients. If we discharge nutrients, if any of you are around prior to this upgrade, the Santa Cruz River looked like pea soup because all the nutrients in there, algae, things of that nature. So what our treatment process does now is it removes those biologically before they're discharged into the river. And it's 75% of its way through its life cycle. Treatment plants are usually designed to last 20 years. Technology changes, equipment wears, especially when it's running at 100 to 120% of capacity all the time. USIBWC contracted for a wastewater treatment plant capital improvement plan, CIP. The contractor will perform a wastewater treatment assessment plan at AMP, including the Nogales treatment plant and the San Diego treatment plant starting in August of 2024, this month. The AMP will include an updated 5-year capital improvement plan and a projection of long-term renewal and replacement funding needs. So prior to this, our agency really didn't have anything like this. So it was piecemeal on our capital plan, and it was hard to get funding, et cetera. So Commissioner Pinar and our executive staff decided that we need to go this route in order to where we can have professional capital plans that we can show Congress and our other representatives exactly what they need and why we need it, and be able to prove it with data. And in advance of this future work, IWC authorized the contractor to conduct a high-level review of both facilities to identify critical needs to include the current 5-year CIP projections for 24 through 28. Slide. This one's a little bit harder to read. The treatment plant is an advanced wastewater treatment capacity with the following design capacity. Treatment plant is 14.7 million gallons per day, hydraulic capacity of 34 million gallons. It was originally constructed in 1970 with upgrades in 1990 and 2009. Major processes facility include headworks and settling basins, screening, grit removal, odor control, biological treatment with 3 bioreactors, aeration blowers, blistering feed systems, final clarifiers with 3 tanks and return sludge pumping, final effluent with 5 traveling bridge filters and ultraviolet disinfection, biosolids with drum thickeners, aerobic digester, lagoon belt presses, polymer feed, support facilities, electrical distribution, backup generators, SCADA system, buildings, roads, and others. So this is more for people who are really taking deep dives in the wastewaters, but I can explain any of this if anybody has any questions later. The Nogales treatment plant consistently operates between 16 and 18 million gallons per day, about 20% above the treatment capacity. The treatment process lacks redundancy, making the plant vulnerable to critical system failures and process upsets. Tanks and equipment cannot be taken out of service for proper maintenance. As I said, we're at 100% or greater capacity all the time, so all systems are online. So we cannot take a system offline in order to do proper preventative maintenance on it. We just have to run it, basically run until fail. Wet weather flows routinely exceed 34 million gallons per day, our hydraulic capacity. The headwork is overwhelmed, resulting in debris accumulating downstream processes, which impacts performance and damages equipment. The solids handling processes are inadequate for new requirements to haul dewatered sludge to a remote landfill in Tucson. Currently, high transport and disposal costs up to $3 million annually. So a large portion of our annual operating budget goes to just transporting biosolids to Tucson. Next slide. So this is what our contractor, when they did their quick analysis, made some recommendations, immediate recommendations. So to complete an engineering alternatives analysis study. So basically have an engineering firm completely look over the whole system and make some recommendations to us. Plan immediately to add a 4th bioreactor and a final clarifier. So this would not add to our treatment capacity. What it would do is allow us to take our current process offline, at least one train offline, and do maintenance on that and have another train that's operational, so it's taking up the capacity that train was treating. Provide a replacement polymer system, and we're looking at a total opinion of $25 to $29 million with the repayment. Slide, please. So this is what our commissioner and our executive staff have said. They've gone to representatives, they've briefed quite a few people, and we've requested money through Congress. There's budgets that are currently in Congress being worked. But for FY25, this is what our current capital plan is, $23.5 million. It's a very aggressive capital plan for an agency as small as we are, as far as putting together all these packages and getting them solicited, but that's what we're trying to do. So one of them is to replace the fuses in train number 2 and install a blower, a new blower number 5. What that is we have 3 trains, 3 treatment trains. One of them, we currently have solicitation out to replace the diffusers, and that's why 25 we want to do treatment train number 2. Construct a 4th bioreactor. This is one of the recommendations from our contractor. We want to rehabilitate one of our 3 clarifiers that we currently have. It's been in service now for 15 years without any sort of substantial work being done to it. We're looking at sludge dryer, and what that would do is that would dry the sludge. The sludge that we have to hold at Tucson, which is a byproduct of the treatment process, that sludge on its best day, is maybe 20% solids and 80% water. So we're hauling 100 tons per day, which consists of 80 tons of water. So if we can dry that, get more of that water out, that's going to substantially decrease our amount of hauling costs going to Tucson. So we are aggressively looking at that. Polymer injection system replacement, we listed that as 100,000. Replace the aerobic digester aerators, 175,000. Rehab under drains, media bed, and mechanical works on the filters 1 through 5. 1.9 million. So these filters were part of the 1990 plant. So the last time those filters were rehabbed was 2001, so 23 years ago. So they're due for rehab themselves. And replace SCADA field hardware and replace SCADA services software. SCADA stands for supervisory control and data acquisition. That's the computers that actually run the treatment plant. So we don't have operators having to make manual controls and have more labor. The computers do that for us based on parameters. All facilities built in the recent times have SCADA systems. They call them also industrial controls. So they become dated. It's hardware and software. You replace your computer every couple of years. Ours have been in there for 15 years, so it's time for replacement. And that's about it for my presentation. So any questions? Bruce?
I just keep my hand up. Who's doing the outreach on this 23.5 million that you need? And I know that you briefed, that you came to a board of briefing with the federal delegation in Tucson. Beyond that, how does the community help IBWC?
So since we're a federal agency, we cannot directly lobby Congress or our representatives, and we cannot encourage people, but we can inform you of our situation. So as Bruce knows, we've informed, I think it was 7 out of 11 of the congressional delegations for Arizona of almost this exact same presentation that I gave this a couple of months ago. I briefed the Port Authority what it is. So this is your community. We're here, we're part of it, I'm part of it as well. So if you believe these are worthwhile things that you want to see, then you feel the need to, please express that to your elected representatives. I can't ask you to do that, but that's the way that our system of government is set up to work. I think that's about the most I can say. Right.
Thank you, John.
Yes, I had a question because I think somewhere in your presentation, you mentioned 34 million gallons per day. What was that?
That's the hydraulic capacity. So if it was just pure water coming through the treatment plant, that's what we could handle before our systems were just be overwhelmed and overflowing. So the treatment capacity is actually that amount of flow can come into the plant, and we can treat it to our discharge permit standards up to that. But at 34 million gallons per day, that's hydraulic, we can't treat that.
Right. And the cost of the IOI here in place was all about 34 million total.
I don't have that figure. Crystal would have that. I don't know.
16.7. About 34 million. So
yeah, roughly.
So we're looking at a total of about $1 million for every million gallons per day.
Right. And this is for our FY25. We also have FY26 plans for capital, but I can't discuss that at this point because it hasn't been presented yet. So
interesting question. Like the 34s.
Right.
I had a question about, given the challenges that the treatment plant is facing with capital and expansion and what you're able to treat, not treat. Is that posing a problem to get an agreement with Nogales, Sonora for a minimum distribution that you guys at ADWR were to negotiate?
Right, so that is an issue that we've been discussing internally. We can't really discuss what we're talking about with Mexico. Those are diplomatic discussions, but it's on the board. And I think our position is that if US tax dollars are being expended to for the Nogales treatment plant, we would like assurances that this water will continue to flow and be able to discharge in the Santa Cruz River. We feel that's a fair exchange. We build the infrastructure and they guarantee us that amount of water. We don't want to spend, the taxpayer spend millions and millions and millions of dollars and have that water shut off. And the treatment plant sit on an old situation. So.
Hi, so you guys, you don't operate under the standard NPDES permit, do you?
We do. It's in Arizona. It's
Arizona.
Yeah, they call it the ZIPT. So it's
Are you able to meet permit the capacity
for that's an interesting question.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No. It's all of our data is public data. We're totally transparent with this. So the majority of our compliance, we're meeting state and federal standards. Where we do have problems is with things that are generated in Mexico, pre-treatment items, metals, volatile organic compounds, things of that nature that come into the treatment plant, but the treatment plant was never designed to be able to treat. And so those give us some compliance issues at times. Other than that, as far as nutrients and biochemical oxygen demand, those are all easily, ammonia removal, those are all easily achievable standards for us.
Are you able to consider land application biosolids? Because of
Right. And so, ironically, when the plant first started up back in 2009 with the current system, we were doing land application. And then we found cadmium at levels that were above the limit for land application. So that's where we had to switch to landfilling. So the levels of the metals are high enough to where we cannot land apply to biosolids, but we can landfill them. They're well below the standards for landfilling. So that is the quandary, is that we cannot take the biosolids to land, which would be much cheaper for us. And so now we're taking them to Tucson. And again, that's the whole reasoning behind this. Let's try to reduce the tonnage.
Do you think the 24 million, do you think that's really going to cover?
We're hoping. I think that's what we're getting. So we're hoping we can do. We're going to try to do the best we can with what we have. So we sharpen our pencils a little bit.
Are there any online questions? No online.
Very good. So the next presenter is Mr. Andres Rangel, he's Associate Director of North American Development Bank, updates and status of Estadio Pump Station.
Good job. Good afternoon. Just wanted to thank IBWC for inviting us to this forum. It's been about a year since we last presented, so it's always nice to be back and discuss with you what is it that NABBank is doing here along the U.S. Mexico border. So today I'm going to focus my presentation on the status of the rehabilitation of the Estadio Lift Station in Nogales, Mexico. And of course, you're welcome to make any comments or questions. So next slide, please, Frankie. So the Nogales, the Estadio Lift Station, it's a very important facility in Mexico in terms of their wastewater collection system. In this slide, you can see it's basically the city of Nogales, Mexico. You might know, the elevation, terrain elevation in Mexico is a little bit higher than in Arizona. So any flow, any wastewater that is generated in Mexico, if it's not pumped back into Mexico, will naturally flow into the US. And what I'm trying to show you here in this slide, in these different colors, are the different basins that the city is divided. This is their wastewater collection system. I'm going to start from the north. That's the yellow area there. That is just adjacent to the U.S. Mexico border. All the wastewater that is generated there in that yellow area, it's going to flow into the U.S. through the mainly the Ariz Cortines collector and another collector, and eventually into the IOI. So there are no any pumping facilities in that area, in that yellow area. So all that water that is generated in Mexico flows into the U.S. Then the blue area on the eastern side of the city, all that wastewater is collected mainly by the Ariz Cortines collector in Mexico. And that collector is eventually connected to the IOI. But Mexico should have and will have the capacity to divert some of the water, the wastewater that is generated in this area, and pump it back into Mexico. And I will explain that in a little bit. But I just want to give the idea that that blue area, some of that wastewater has the potential to flow into the US and some to remain in Mexico. The green area to the west is the area that is collected by the technological collector. And that area should have 100% potential to be pumped back into Mexico and not to reach the US. And the reason for that is that if you see there's a red dot between those three areas, that's where the Estadio lift station is located at. So it's very critical that lift station, because it can collect all the water from the western area of the city, a portion of the wastewater of the eastern side of the city, and then pump it south into their wastewater treatment facility in Mexico, which is the Los Alisos wastewater treatment plant. And then the last area, the pink area on the south, this area, all the wastewater that is generated there basically flows south into the wastewater treatment plant, the Mexican wastewater treatment plant. So that area doesn't need to pump any water. It just naturally flows into their wastewater treatment plant. And that's why I just want to emphasize the importance of the Estadio lift station, so that Mexico can comply with the minute that John just mentioned, the quantity of wastewater that should be sent to the US and the quantity that should be kept in Mexico. Next slide, please. So as John mentioned, there's some minutes that have been agreed between the US and the Mexican governments into where Mexico is supposed to be sending no more than 9.9 MGDs of wastewater into the US. And you can see that on the right side of the slide. That's the water that Mexico should be sending, no more than 9.9 million MGDs. And these are figures as of 2023. We know that Mexico has been sending more water than that, and that causes issues here in the US side, right, on the operation of the treatment plant. But anyway, so Mexico's been sending more water. The average, and this figure that I'm showing here, the 2.1 MGD, that is just the average of all the months from last year. But that doesn't mean that that's the peak that Mexico has set. For instance, if you look at just to the left of that, where I mentioned there how much wastewater Mexico is sending. Last year was sending between 9.7 MGDs, which is below the minute, but up to 14.5, and this is also an average. So that's a big problem to the treatment plant. And in order for Mexico to be able to comply with the minutes, as I mentioned, they need to have the Estadio lift station operating, and that facility needs to collect enough wastewater to send it back to Los Avisos. And I think that's also important for you to know. It's not only that the facility, the station, the lift station has to work, but it also has to receive enough water to pump it back into Los Avisos. So I will explain that in a 1 or 2 slides more. So next slide, please. Okay, here you see where the Estadio lift station is located at. That's kind of like the purple polygon on the left. The red line is the Ruiz Cortines collector. That's the one that I was showing you earlier that, you know, collects most of the water from the eastern side of the city. Just west from there, the green line, that's the Obregon collector. And that also sends eventually water into the US, connects, before it crosses into the US, they both connect and they connect to the IOI. The important thing here is, and the yellow line on the left, that's the technological collector, the one that I was mentioning that collects all that green area on the western side of the city. And let me start with that one, with the green, the yellow line. So the technological collector, as you can see here, it goes on the western side, and eventually there's a connection that allows that collector to send all its wastewater into the lift station. And we're talking that collector is sending about 1.6, 1.77 MGDs of wastewater to the lift station. We know that in the past, and when I say the past is this year, and as you know, 2023, Mexico has been working on some strong water system that is there in the technological avenue. And that's one of the reasons why this year, 2024, some months this year, the lift station was not receiving any wastewater from the technological collector. They were not able to send any water into the lift station because they were working on the street. So all that water was flowing into the Obregon collector and eventually into the US. And that's why you see those space of 14 MGDs on the US side. We know now that the collector is sending its water, the technological collector is sending its water to the lift station, about 1.6, 1.7 MGDs, as I mentioned. So that will be important, but that will be not enough for Mexico to comply with the minutes. They need to divert some of the wastewater from the Ruiz Cortines collector into the lift station. And in order to do that, there's a siphon that's kind of like the orange line there between the red and the green lines. There's a siphon there that will allow Mexico to divert some of the wastewater that runs on the Ruiz Cortines collector and send some of that volume to the lift station. But there are some issues there. The utility has looked into that siphon. They haven't operated that siphon in months, so it's clogged. So if we were to have the lift station up and running and working well, it would not solve the whole problem. We need for that line, that orange line, to be working so that Mexico can divert some of that wastewater into the lift station. We have been told by the city that they have already went there and, you know, kind of assessed the problem. And they have mentioned that they're gonna have some crews, the city, not the utility, the city, and look into that so that eventually they can unclog that line and have it being operational. So that again, some water from the Ruiz Cortines collector can be sent to the lift station. Another important thing that needs to happen is that there needs to be certain valves on the Ruiz Cortines collector to be able to divert some of the flow into that orange line. So the city is also going to install a manual valve for now in order for them to try to measure how much water they need to send back to Mexico and then allow enough water to comply with the minute, that 9.9 MGD that I mentioned earlier. We've been working with the city and the utility. So eventually with funds from EPA, when we certified this project, we're gonna be installing, more modern valve and some, metering as well. So that the utility can really fine tune how much water they need to divert from the Riz Cortines into the lift station in order to comply with the minute and not send more than 9.9 MGDs. And the rest should be sent to the lift station and then down to Los Avisos. I'm gonna mention now, what is it that we have to do at the lift station? Now that, I discussed why it's so important, the lift station, the siphon, and so on. So what is it that we have been doing at the lift station? So next slide, please. So we've been working with the utility in 3 phases. All these funds that we have been investing come from EPA. And the first phase concluded in 2023. And basically, we focus on a few things. You see there in the picture where that person is standing. That's a grid chamber. As John has mentioned here, the treatment plant, they've been receiving a lot of solids, sand, and so on. In Mexico, they have the same problem. And that problem was also affecting their pumps. So one of the things that we did is we built that infrastructure that would allow them to retain some of those solids in the chamber and protect the pumps. So in the picture, you'll see there that, well, there's a crane there, and that's what they used to take out all the debris. But if you look back in the picture towards to the left, that's where the pumps are. So this chamber is before those pumps, and the idea is to protect those pumps. And we know that they've been using this facility now, so that's an important thing. What else? Well, we built those the traveling cranes in order for them to be able to clean the chamber, and also in order for them to, if they need to replace or rehabilitate any of the pipe pumps, to be able to do so. And the investment there, it's, let me see here, it's, about $850,000 that we invested. So that has been completed. If we could go to the next slide, please, the second phase. The second phase has also been completed. And this was more of like a electromechanical phase where we wanted to automate the 5 pumps and make sure that they have control of operating those pumps, so that they can really, if there's an excessive flow or lower flow volume, that they can really manage that so that they can always comply with the needs. And these works have been completed. The only issue is that after we, completed this phase and having this new software and hardware, the pumps that they have there and some of the infrastructure that they have there, the piping, electrical wires, and so on, are very old. So there was a disconnection between these new systems and hardware with their old pumps and electrical system. And that's a problem, and we're facing that problem. So right now, we know that they are only using one of the 5 pumps. They will only need at this time to use 2 pumps if they had enough water to comply with the minutes. But we want all the 5 pumps to be working. Of course, they're not all going to be working at the same time. They're going to be working phases. And that's important so that you protect the equipment, you can get maintenance to the equipment, and so on if you do that. So this second phase has been completed, again, with funding from EPA. And we are now moving on to the third phase. If you can try to go to the next slide, please. So the third phase involves basically, some works to allow this hardware that I mentioned and software to really work in sync with the 5 pumps. And we're going to be providing funding for the utility to be able to contract to services. They have already selected the contractor. These pumps and software equipment comes from Sweden. So, it's become a little bit challenging to have those conversations with the contractor in Mexico, but we believe we're moving forward. We haven't been able to sign a contract, but as soon as we can sign the contract, then they will start working on that. Now, it's important for you to know that And as I mentioned there, once the contract is signed, it's gonna take 6 to 8 weeks for this company to get all the equipment because most of it comes from Europe. And then after that, they will have to install it and so on. So I would say if we can get the contract signed, let's say in the month of September, perhaps sometime in November or so, they should be able to complete all the work and the facility should be able to be working smoothly and they should be able to operate the facility with no issues, 5 months. There are also some works that Mexico is gonna be working on some civil works and so on. So we're gonna be installing a flow meter. So in some of the conversations that we have with them, we've been asking, so how much water do you send back to Los Alisos from the treatment from the station? They don't know because they don't have a flow meter. So those are some of the things that we're gonna be installing a flow meter at the Ruiz Cortines to see how much we send into the station. And then a flow meter in the station to see how much we're collecting from the Tecnológico and the Ruiz Cortines and send back to Los Alisos. So we'll keep you updated on this. This is the last phase. The funds that we have from EPA will be exhausted with this third phase. And there's a need to keep upgrading any hardware or any equipment at this station. We'll have to go through a whole new certification process for that. Because that's where all the funding is right now. We'll talk it up with this third phase. So I think this is the last one I did, but can you go to the next one? Yeah, that's the last one. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
So I'm just curious, does the US EPA funding all of these projects, or is there any contribution from Mexico?
So
what is there, if you could kind of just give us an idea.
So the first phase was basically funded by EPA. The second phase, there were some funds coming from Mexico, from the local utility. And in the third phase, there are also going to be funds coming from the local utility and the city. Also, and I didn't mention this, but the state government is now rehabilitating the Ruiz Cortines collector. And those funds, 100% of those funds are coming from the state of Sonora. So there's been a contribution from the federal, state, and local level in Mexico, and matching the funds from EPA.
So Mexico is matching the funds.
Correct. Mexico is matching some funds from EPA. Yeah.
About 2.4.
I don't have the figures right now, but what we usually do is that EPA requests that at least Mexico provides at least 50% of the funding, if no more. So we always look into that. So yeah. Yes, sir.
It was really interesting to see the different contributing areas to the different directions.
Frankie, can we go back to that slide, please? Order. Please, sorry, thank you.
One more?
Yeah, I'll let you know. The one with the colors. One more. Yeah, that one.
How does this relate to the groundwater basins from which this water is being extracted? Because in the long term, to be sustainable, you want the groundwater extracted from each basin to be returned to the same base.
Correct. So, and I haven't done myself a lot of research on that, but let me tell you what we know. Most of the groundwater that Nogales, Mexico is extracting is coming from the south of the city, towards where the Los Alisos Wastewater treatment plant is, on the Rio Rico, which flows south from the city. So they are very interested in getting more water into their treatment plant and then disposing of that water on the Rio River so that they can recharge their local aquifer. They know that now they are extracting more water than the aquifer is receiving, so it's not sustainable. So yeah, there's interest at the city and at local level to look into that.
Do you know how that would relate to the 9.9? Hopefully that's kind of in the balance there.
To be honest, I do not know. I know that, as I said, there's over extraction there. But we'll have to look into the numbers and see if that will, I mean, we know that's gonna help, but we don't know, I don't know particularly if that will be a solution where the aquifer will be sustainable or not.
Because it's been decades, right? That the
Correct.
water has come from Los Arisos and released to the IOI.
Yeah, so basically what is happening right now, you're extracting water from the Los Alisos aquifer, and the benefactor of all, or some of that wastewater is the Santa Cruz River and the aquifer on the US side. So yeah, that's what's happening.
A big deficit. in
Correct.
Los Alisos.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
My question is on, I don't understand exactly. You mentioned that there's not enough water reaching the lift station to operate to full capacity. However, the flows coming to the US have been reduced quite a bit. So I don't understand where that water is going, because if the water is not going to Los Alisos and it's not coming here, where is that going?
Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. So I can just tell you of kind of like averages from last year. Of course, every day it's different. But what happens is that the technological collector can only send up to, like, as I said, 1.6, 1.7 MGDs. That's what it's generated in that area. When you have peaks here on the US side of 3, 4 MGDs over the 9.9 that it's the agreement, some of that comes from the technological, but the rest comes from the rest of the city, basically the Ruiz Cortines collector. And they haven't been able to divert wastewater from the Ruiz Cortines into the lift station because of what I mentioned, that the siphon is clogged. So the only thing I can say, Alejandro, is that right now, if they would like to send more than 1.6 or 1.7 MGDs back to Los Alisos, they will not be able to do that because the Ruiz Cortines is not sending any wastewater to the lift station. They need to unclog that line, and that will allow them to send flows back into Mexico. Now, I'm just gonna guess here. If you're mentioning that sometimes, even without sending water from the Ruiz Cortines, Mexico is complying with the 9.9 MGDs, my guess is that perhaps some of the flows that you receive on the IOI is not only wastewater, but also stormwater, a combination of stormwater and wastewater. That's why when we have, the monsoon season, we see an increase in the water that goes into the IOI, but that will be my guess. Yes, sir.
Would that also include infiltration of groundwater in the Mexican section, which has not received cure in place?
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah, but my question is, we have seen a reduction on the flows coming in across the border on the IOI. And if there are clogs and things like that, and it's not reaching the lift station, my guess is that those flows are going somewhere. And I know that some of those were going through the Nogales wash and coming just through the wash. But I'm really interested because I have seen, at least in the last 2 quarters, I have seen a reduction on the flows coming to the IOI from Mexico. And when I know that you're saying that the lift station is not working to capacity, so it has to be going somewhere. And I guess you need to know that.
So yeah, let me explain that. So the lift station was not working for several months. Now it's working. So now the 1.6, 1.7 MGDs coming from the technological are being sent to the lift station and back to Mexico. So that's one of the main reasons why Mexico has been able to reduce some of the flows into the US. But again, they're not going to be able to reduce all they need to reduce until the siphon is working and they can divert some flows from the Ruiz Cortines. But yes, right now the lift station is working just with the capacity that it's receiving from the technological. So yeah, for sure you can see a decrease in flows into the US. Are those enough? They are not enough. they need to have that resource operating so that everything can be working as agreed between the two countries.
The other question that I just wanted to mention about Ben's question that say that the balance in the aquifers, my understanding is that most of the water that the city pumps are from two different basins outside of the city. And that's the Santa Cruz River and from the Los Alisos basins, and maybe some from Cihuta and somewhere in that area. So I think the balance should be kind of combining all those sources to see where the water is getting depleted.
Correct. And what we know is that, and that's what they have told us, is that once the lift station, and not only the lift station, but the wastewater is operating, and once they upgrade and increase the capacity of the Los Alisos, their goal is to recharge the Los Alisos aquifer with all that water, with the 5 MGDs up to 7.5 MGD, which will be the capacity of that treatment plant. But that will be the aquifer that they will be focusing on the Los Alisos one.
So I had a question, we can talk later about the binational aquifer study, but people have been talking about the treaty minutes and the capacity set by the treaty minutes, and we don't want to spend money that's U.S. money, to be processing things. Has anyone assigned any value or benefit that can be associated with the influent that's coming to the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant from south of the border, so that the effluent then recharges Santa Cruz, goes north, helps growth. We've had conversations, Ben just raised the issue about the aquifers, et cetera. But I just didn't know whether anyone is assigning any benefit to that outflow from the Nogales, the inflow and then the outflow from the Nogales International Treatment Plant.
So of course, I just can't speak for NatBank, and no, we have not looked into that. We're right now really focusing on trying to address the infrastructure needs in Nogales, Sonora, so that they can comply with the minutes. But we haven't looked into that.
Are there any other questions online? No more questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. So now we're going to move into our public comment, and we'll start with the live audience here, and then we'll move to any comments that the public may have. And we ask that we limit those to any public comments to 3 minutes each. So do we have any persons who wish to speak publicly on any related topics?
It's not the board.
Right, this is for the audience. We don't have any live questions online, Frankie?
Someone has their hand raised. Are there any comments online or questions? There are none.
Okay, very good. So we're going to move on to the board discussion at this point. And so we're opening up to board discussion online and live. So.
I don't know if Gilbert's on, but do you have any idea of the status of the Santa Cruz binational aquifer study? There's a whole lot of stuff going on that would benefit from the data that is being generated.
Is Gilbert online, Frankie?
He's not.
Yeah, he's not online, John, but I'll talk to Gilbert hopefully tomorrow or.
Yeah, I occasionally send him stuff and I copy Sharon on it.
Right.
And it's just been a lot of quiet,
I'll touch base with him and ask him definitely this week.
and, last time, when we met in Tucson, I was asking if there were any plans, not just PFAS or PFAS related, but any plans to be testing, say, the San Pedro as it comes in, or the Santa Cruz as it goes out and then comes back in, so that we know what's coming in, or we know what went out, and what's coming back. I just don't know, because I was admiring what you all are putting together for your water data on your website, and I just don't know what's there or what the plans were.
So we briefed our environmental management division on some of the things that you have brought up. I do not know what the current status is on that yet. I don't know if they've requested funding to do that or not. That's a follow-up I have to get with Gilbert on as well. So.
Couple of things. First of all, I heard today that the USGS gauge at Nogales has been refunded. I don't know how long it's been down, but it's been down too long. We really depend on that data, but we also depend on the data from the gauge at the border at Nogales when the river goes into Mexico. So I hope that gets refunded as well. So we have a full set of data there. The second thing is, I think we had 3 really good presentations, and I think they all deserve a good hand.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Thank you very much. So specifically on the Nogales wash gauge, Ben, that was I believe that was a Border 12 project. Border 2020 it was funded by EPA originally, went to USGS to install it, put it in place. They funded it for 1 year, and then we picked up the funding after that. We have, I'm sure you're aware of how it works, but the federal government is very convoluted when it comes to government agreements. So we had an umbrella agreement with Department of Interior, and the funding of that gauge was under that agreement. That agreement expired. Both agencies took a while before it was put back in place. So we were able to, we had the money for it. So we have it for this fiscal year, it's definitely funded. Hopefully it's going to be funded for next fiscal year. I put it in my budget to fund every year. The agreement's in place for at least the next 5 years. But what's nice about that gauge is that USGS kept it going. So there's data going all the way back to September of last year. So it just wasn't being published on the webpage. So it's a good tool for you. It's a good tool for us. As far as funding into the low fuel gauge, we weren't involved with that, so I don't know about that. I'll have to look into that to see if that's the potential for us. So,
So I was just gonna point out one thing, the Border 2025 action plans for Arizona, Sonora. Originally I thought they were gonna be updated in like April, then it became June. And then it became late July, early August, but we're still, as of this morning, it's still at released. So there should be something in goal 2 dealing with water coming out soon on Border 2025. So let's go to that.
sir.
John, you mentioned that you have about 300 employees, and that 1/3 of them are at retirement, beyond retirement. So do you have a succession plan? Do you have people that are interested in working there? What kind of planning are you doing to cover that? Because you're gonna lose a lot of talent.
We are, and we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge. The people that have worked for us for 30 years and know where that monument is behind that bush, and, that sort of thing. We're losing that. So what we started earlier, last year, I believe, commissioners started a manpower study for the agency. So we had a contractor come in and look at our entire agency and give us an outside opinion. Do we have enough people? Do we not have enough people? Succession plans, things of that nature. I believe those results are in. I haven't seen myself all the results yet, but those are absolutely important factors that we need to address. We need to pass this knowledge on. I'm looking at retirement soon. A lot of folks have, so we're trying to, it's good to get new people in, people that are fresh and have new ideas and new blood and that type of thing. But when you lose that institutional knowledge, once I retire, I don't know if I want to be answering the phone at 3 a.m. And so, but yes, it is a concern for us. And, for myself, I'm a local resident. And so I'm always going to have some connection to what happens. So I will answer the phone if I need to. So,
Here online, especially if there's a lot more activity on our northern border with Canada, is IBWC also responsible for that? And how does that increase, if it's true, going to affect your agency and the attrition?
Right. It's actually an interesting question because there is a International Boundary and Water Commission with Canada, but it has nothing to do with us. It's a whole separate commission. Yes. Whole separate commission. I think they have a total of 5 employees. So, there's a lot of different type issues up there. Not a lot of infrastructure issues, as much as we have with the infrastructure. Most of the infrastructure issues have been worked out between the local communities there for a very long time. But yes, it's an interesting question. There is a small agency that works on that.
What are they called?
I believe it's International Boundary and Water Commission of Canada and the United States, I believe.
They're IBC, International Boundary Commission.
Yeah.
Without the standard.
And that's actually what our name used to be. Our original name was International Boundary Commission. And in 1944, with the treaty, they added the water portion. So, yeah, it's an interesting, change. I'd love to go up there sometime and visit them and see the types of issues that they have to deal with and how they resolve them, things of that nature too. So,
Double good.
yeah. Do we have any more board discussion? Any board members that may be online that could discuss them? No?
Online.
If not, I think we will move into suggested future agenda items.
Next year's in time or whatever, I would mention the idea of a tour of the facility. Is that still something that's could be done?
Absolutely.
I think that in light of what you want to do with your expansions, it might be useful for people to see that.
Oh, absolutely. So we're, of course, at any time that's convenient, either individually or as a group, the board members are welcome to come out for a tour. For members of the general public, we can organize a tour. For the general public, we don't usually do individual tours. We try to do them in a group. We have a lot of moving parts there, so we try to keep things. And just as a note as well, after 9/11, we stopped allowing the bird watchers into the facility for security purposes, but we do still have special events. We coordinate with the Audubon Society for the Christmas bird count, things of that nature.
2 agenda items, one for sure, the other one's maybe. So one for sure is an update on the aquifer study.
Yes.
An update on that would be great.
That would be good. What's that?
So one that we're doing for, see what the impacts of increasing falls to do some increasing about percent reserve, so that the aquifer balance better.
Right, yeah, the Gilbert study, right? Yeah.
And the other one is, we've heard too often now, and sadly, that Liberty Water, Rio Rico it's like 900% over the PFA's outlet. I've received no notice as customers. If there's something that IBWC can help us with, maybe getting a presentation here from ADQ on that or something, because we're dealing with, 900% exceeding some PFAS and no notifications.
I think we could definitely help it. We can request the, ADQ, to give a presentation. We recently had them, was it this last meeting that we had or the previous meeting? We had a presentation from PFAS from ADQ, but it wasn't specifically with Liberty. But I think that would be a good agenda item. Maybe Claudia can, if we talk to her, she can help us out. I know that. I put her on the spot. Sorry, Claudia.
So, we did at the March meeting, we had the big PFAS, presentation. And so, I don't know whether it leads into anything, whether you have to do anything special with metals or the PFAS that might be coming over at the treatment plant. Another topic that I made it in March, but it could be again for the next meeting. And I forget, it's the next one for Douglas?
Coaching County.
So you could bring in NACO, but, I might be in that, but that quarter 2025 should be out in another 4 months at least.
Right.
And so you can have just focus on goal 2, which is the water stuff, but limit it maybe from Bill over, need to go over to you, obviously, but get that. And then, for a minute, I thought Ben was talking about the Santa Cruz Binational Aquifer Study, but that's probably going to be its own study. Because there's so much going on about that. So, but it would be nice to know about the water tests. If you were going to do anything between San Pedro and Santa Cruz.
Okay, that's excellent. So I think that's a good agenda topic. Being that the next meeting will be in Cochise County, NACO will be a important subject matter for the locals out there. So I think we might be able to ask Andres to give another presentation on the work that NACO's been doing out there. They've been doing quite a bit of work out there. So, Bruce?
The study from the U of A on the aquifer,
That's what John's talking about.
the study that was presented to us by the University of Arizona on the aquifers, that's going to be the subject of a special study session at the Board of Supervisors meeting on August 21st.
Oh, excellent.
I think that meeting starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, but it is on the county website. And then ADQ is having a meeting in Patagonia that evening from 6 to 9 as they're talking about their permitting process for South 32 line. Water. Perhaps maybe Ben, if we want to move fast, because the next meeting we're having is Coach, he said it rotates up to Pima.
Yes.
And Coach, I don't think the meeting Coach, he said might be appropriate for us to talk about the PFAS and Rio Rico. If we want to move a little quicker on that, perhaps we can, the Board of Supervisors can ask for that to happen sooner, if you want that sooner. We can solve it. And then if we want to do a follow-up in this group, maybe we can do it in Pima County in 8 months.
And the whole, and the PFAS is it's a wide ranging issue that's impacting all communities, all with drinking water, with wastewater, et cetera. So it's breaking. Everybody is trying to figure out how to handle it. So good topics.
Yeah, because when I raised the issue to the nice guy from ADQ specifically about San Pedro, he said, we don't do any testing basically at the border, but he said, I can tell you that we've not had any inflows in the wells that they had in that area down near the border, relatively speaking. But who knows? Right. We're continuing to find PFAS
various places.
Well, it's an interesting topic, especially with the San Pedro. The main contributor to the San Pedro as far as pollution is the Cananea line. You know, I don't know what, if PFAS is used in any other processes or not, and I don't know. So yeah, I think it would be a good topic to discuss. So. Any other items? If not, does anybody in the audience have any suggested future agenda items they would like to see? No. If not, I would especially like to thank Santa Cruz County and the Tubac Community Center Foundation for providing free of charge to us these beautiful facilities. Thank you very much. We definitely appreciate it. We appreciate John Campbell being our technical assistant here.
I had help from Reed.
So thank you very much. It's these are beautiful facilities and they allow these type of outreach meetings. If that's all, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Sir.
I don't know. I think Bruce will have to tell us like the study.